For Algebra 2, a final exam review for our second semester, take a look at the top of the screen. We had some properties of exponents. That came from Chapter 6. X to the m times x to the n, that's when you add the powers. A power to a power, x to the m raised to the n, that's x to the m times n. For number 3, x to the m divided by x to the n, that's when you subtract. And if you have a negative exponent, property number 4, you can see that's where we take a reciprocal. Well, the very first thing that you should do is use property number 1. Take 3 plus negative 1. You've got x to the m times x to the n. 3 plus negative 1 is going to add to a 2. So if you can use one of those properties early, you should. Now we're going to use that second property. We're going to apply negative 2 to both. We'll get 2 to the negative 2 power. Powers, 2 powers, this is where we multiply. 2 times negative 2, you get negative 4. Then we're going to use that fourth property. It's off the screen, but we're going to take a reciprocal. We're going to flip, and we're going to have positive powers. 1 over 2 squared times x to the fourth. Simplifying that, you'll get 1 over 4x to the fourth. Let's take a look at number 2. You might notice you've got x to the fourth over x to the fourth. That's going to cancel out. You'd have 3/9. Well, my goodness, if you struggle with fractions, remember you can always come back to the 3/9 on the calculator strategy. Just doing alpha y equals, you get 1/3. And you already saw that the x's completely cancel out. You can use that third property to get y to the fourth y to the fourth power minus the fifth. When you're dividing, you take your top power minus your bottom. You'd get y to the negative 1. We've dealt with this a lot, however, where hopefully you are comfortable enough to know that there are more y terms down below. 4 of them would cancel down below, leaving you with a single one. Either way, you get 1 over 3y. As you look at number 3, you're going to apply powers to powers. You'll have 81 to the negative 3/4 power. Here we have to multiply negative 8 times negative 3/4. We're taking that negative 3/4, we're multiplying it everywhere. And let's real quickly just see what's happening. If fractions have been an issue for you, just use the calculator. You don't even have to hit the fraction button. Negative 8 times negative 3/4, you'll get 6, x to the 6. Go ahead and take 4 times negative 3/4 here. And without too much work, you're going to see that you get negative 3. You'll get y to that negative third power. What about 81 to the negative 3/4? Well, you can even let the calculator deal with that. Now, if you just typed it in this way, 81 to the negative 3/4 power, you'd get some decimal. But remember, you could hit math and go up here to number 1 with frac. Without too much work, you'll get 1 over 27. So your calculator is going to be able to help you tremendously. Let's just clean this up a little bit. We know x to the 6 is up on top. You could put a 1 out in front of it or not. That y to the third has to come down. And here you have your final answer. For number 4, it says factor and solve over the complex number system. Well, we could subtract a 4 to get x squared minus 4 equals 0. And right now this is a difference of squares. If I had a squared minus b squared, that factors to a plus b times a minus b. And what you can see here is if we have x squared, take the square root of that, you'd get x and x. Here's your 4, that's your b squared. Take a square root of that, you'd get plus 2 and a minus 2. And then we're going to use what's known as the zero factor theorem. You take these parentheses, you set them equal to 0, and then you solve. You minus a 2 on both sides over here. to get x equals negative 2. For our second equation, we'll just add a 2 to get x equals positive 2. Another helpful hint, when your highest power is a 2, expect to see 2 answers. Well, factoring here, x to the 4th minus 9. Let's do another difference of squares. This time, however, we'll have x squared and x squared. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. We'll have to have a plus. We'll have to have a minus. What number times itself is 9? Well, a 3. So we'll have a plus 3 and a minus 3. And at this point, you can look at your difference of squares, the x squared minus 3. 3 is not a perfect square itself. We're going to have to stop there. For number 6, we'll factor by grouping. Look at your first two terms. What could you pull out? Well, x squared. And what's going to be left? An x. And then a minus 6. I'm taking away 2 x's from both. The negative 2x plus 12. Factor out a negative 2. If your leading term is negative, you're going to have to factor that out. And I'm dividing both of these by negative 2. You'll have x. And then 12 divided by negative 2 is actually negative 6. But you might remember way back in our beginning of that second semester, we said that when you're factoring by grouping, you'll see those two parentheses being identical. So we're going to factor out an x minus 6. And then we'll be left with x squared minus 2. As we're solving to finish this up, we're going to use that zero product property again. We'll take x minus 6, our first parenthesis, set it equal to 0. We'll also take x squared minus 2 and set it equal to 0. I'll add a 6 to both sides here to get x is equal to 6. Here I'll add a 2, but I hope you remember how we'd solve this squared term. We're going to take square roots, and there are 2 of them, and we'll have x equals plus or minus the square root of 2, but we also have x equals 6. When the highest power is a 3, we'll have 3 solutions. The plus or minus counts as 2. The positive 6 is your third. We're going page by page. This is the end of our first video.